What is up, everybody? What's going on? Thank you so much for being here, guys. What's going
Hello,
on?
everybody.
We got Todd, Missy, Carrie, Cindy, Janet, Elizabeth, Steve O, Mistina. Thanks, guys, so much for being here. And before we start, we gotta shout out Tracy K, our mod, who, if not for her, we would not have this interview. She reached out to Sarah, and Sarah was kind enough to come on with us. So Tracy's not feeling so good. She's got the vid. We're thinking about you, Tracy, if you're listening. Thank you so much. But yeah, this is our first Woman Who Rocks of 2024, and we are super excited, right, babe?
Yeah, this is setting the bar extremely high for the rest of the year.
Yeah, this is a big deal, folks, and we're kind of really honored that Sarah would come on with us. Um, it's pretty special. I mean, we literally watched the trial. We watched her sister's trial, and if not for Sarah, there is no trial. So, I mean, it's pretty amazing, right, babe?
Yes, definitely. I can't even, and she's been laser focused on justice for not only her sister, but for other people as well. And so she's just the perfect guest for us to have on and definitely fits the bill of a woman who rocks.
Yeah, and she's the host of the Voices for Justice podcast, which Armaz just shared in the chat, as well as the new one, Media Pressure, and MediaPressure.com, which we just shared. And also, when we have our super special guest, I added, she has her own emoji in the chat. So without further ado, Sarah Turney. Hey, Sarah, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. That was the nicest introduction ever. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you so much for coming on with us. We really appreciate it. Uh,
Of course.
My favorite question that I like to start with, because I like to try to kind of figure out what it is that kind of makes people go in the direction they go in as far as a career. And so I like to kind of get a pulse on what you were like as a little girl.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. I mean, I think I went through a few different stages, right? I was actually kind of always an entrepreneur, and I think that that came from us just not having a lot of money. So I would do things like sell stickers to neighborhood kids. I ended up like creating, you remember like the 90s cat in the hat hats, the really tall, multicolored ones? Me and my
Mhm.
friends would make those and sell them. So I was always into something growing up. And then, of course, I got older, I became a teenager, and I was extremely unruly, and eventually settled down, went to college and all that. But yeah, I was kind of all over the place. You know what I mean?
I do because I was too, still am, in fact. And I meant to share this before. I meant to share this screenshot because this is from your Twitter. This is your pinned tweet, and we can kind of get into this now. Where this is wild. So I'm using TikTok to catch my sister's killer, and then like a month later, I use TikTok to catch my sister's killer. I mean, that's just amazing. So if you could tell folks, how did you get into podcasting, and how did you start out with all everything that you do?
Of course. I started because eventually the police sat me down and said that the best way to get justice for my missing sister, Alyssa Turney, was to get media attention. So my sister had gone missing quite some time before. In 2001, I was only 12 at the time, which is kind of what I was alluding to, that my childhood was all over the place and certainly changed after she was gone. But that's really what started it. At a certain point, the police directly told me to get media attention, and I was so lucky to get so much support from the true crime community. And at a certain point, everybody just kept telling me, you should start your own podcast. And I did, with the world's worst laptop, and about $100 investment in my closet. And here I am today.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride.
I don't know how many people who are here tonight were able to hear your testimony during the trial, but it was the consummate meaning of having a sister to me. And it was so profound and so wonderful, that you were able to be her voice like that. And so I just wanted to give you an opportunity tonight to tell the people that are here a little bit about Alyssa.
Of course, yeah. So, like I said, I was 12 when Alyssa went missing, and she was 17. And if you would have asked me back then when I was 12, I would have told you that she was the meanest sister ever. Because we had that typical sibling relationship where we were hot and cold and we fought all the time over the stupidest things. And then, she would spend 2 or 3 hours doing my nails or doing my hair right after, and we would make up. But Alyssa was, honestly, like, so cool. My entire life, I just thought that she was the coolest person I'd ever met. I always wanted to listen to the music she was listening to. I was definitely trying to steal her clothes all the time, and she was just my hero, and she also acted as my mom, which is something I don't think I realized when I was a little kid. You don't think about how dishes get clean or why you have clean laundry. It's as if it's magic and it just appears. But that was really all her. So, of course, unfortunately, in our household, she was quite abused by our father, and that's something I didn't see either. So, on the surface, I thought that she was kind of this mean older sister, but when I got older, I realized that, there was so much more beneath the surface. And really, what's so remarkable looking back is despite all of that, she was really, really kind. She was a sweet person who would do anything for anyone. She was just fantastic.
That's awesome. And can you tell us a little bit about? I mean, like Shannon said, we watched that trial, and you were a badass. You were amazing. What was that experience like for you to go to after all that work you did, and then go to that trial and have testify? And what was it like going through it and the aftermath? Aftermath. Tell us about it.
I mean, it was horrendous. By far the worst thing I'd ever gone through, and part of that was, the state kept me in the dark, and they told me that that was on purpose. Basically, I was public enemy number 1 because of what I'd done in the media, and, my father's defense team just went after me and after me over everything. They tried to say that I worked for the police, that I worked for the state, that I tried to frame my dad with this inmate that had this false confession to killing Alyssa. The whole thing was extremely traumatic and just terrible, and so much of it was targeted at me, and it was just really, really rough. And one of the hardest things about testifying was I was specifically told that they were going to put me up there and let the defense attack me. That was their strategy. They knew that they were going to go after me hard, and they thought if I was just kind and I was quiet, which was really, really hard for me, they basically said, whatever you do, try not to fight back. Try not to be sassy. Try to just stay quiet. Be the sad, grieving sister. And I tried my best to do that, and they did exactly what they anticipated. The defense just continuously attacked me, to the point where they were screaming in my face. They were talking about testimony, or I should say, a police interview I gave when I think I was about 19. And all that was based off my memories of being 12. And so my father's defense attorney, I'll never forget him just screaming in my face, asking, were you lying then or are you lying now? It was awful. I'd never gone through anything like that. But I tried to remain calm and factual. I did get some things in there. I couldn't help myself. I think one of the biggest things that the news really picked up was at a certain point when he kept asking why my memory was so bad and why I, kind of changed my story throughout the time, really, when I realized how my father was a monster. I just finally said I was brainwashed. And yeah, I mean, that's just the reality of it. I was brainwashed. So it was hard because they were referencing all this testimony based off memories when I was 12. And of course, now I'm 35 and feel completely different. I think everybody does. When you look at your parents when you're 12 versus when you're an adult, things look totally different. So it was awful.
I got a comment here from another. Well, let me put this so it's not blocked. Another former woman who rocks, Julie Murray. My inspiration, Sarah, is single-handedly transforming the entire true crime genre. So that's pretty awesome. Thanks for being here, Julie. Sorry, go ahead, babe.
Thank you, Julie.
We'll talk more about Julie later too, because you have an exciting project with her coming up. Um, Maybe if you didn't watch the trial with us or you didn't watch the trial at all, you may not be aware of the outcome. And that was that the judge decided that they were going to not go through with the jury. They weren't going to give it to the jury. I don't know. I can't remember what exactly that legal term is called. It was dismissed because
Because
of,
it's acquitted. Yeah.
yes. So basically, what, since then, what types of things are you still searching for? What, I know that you have written, on your Twitter and other places that you have not given up. Um, what what is what are you searching for as it relates to justice for Alyssa right now?
Sure. So, I mean, more evidence, right? Of course, my father can't be charged with the same exact crime, but there are still charges to be had if we can find what we need. And I don't want to give everything away because my father does kind of stalk my social media pages and watches what I do. I'll just say that I really want to conduct the first ever search for Alyssa's remains because the police have literally never searched. They did do a search warrant on like our old home and had cadaver dogs there, but outside of that, they have never conducted a search, even in the places they say that they want to look. The thing is, like, having Alyssa's remains never meant that much to me. And I feel like people think I'm crazy when I say that, but it's like her soul is something completely different than having her remains. And as much as I wish that we had those, the police always told me that we didn't need them, especially near the end there. So that's just the only avenue really that hasn't been explored. And so now I think it's time to finally do it.
Mia Beto in chat says, Sarah, I binged your podcast and I admire your tenacity and grit. Talking about your father, uh, are you or or have you ever been afraid of your dad retaliating against you or your siblings?
Yeah. I mean, I think I go back and forth, right? I had a really rough upbringing. After Alyssa was gone, I was basically on my own and I ran the streets of mostly West Phoenix like crazy, like didn't come home for weeks at a time. So I kind of go back and forth between like, I'm not afraid and I'm not afraid of anything. And also the harsh reality that I am public enemy number one for him. So it's kind of both. Some nights I'm totally okay. And some nights when I hear a bump in the night, I think it's him.
And folks, we've been sharing, we talked about before, and we're sharing the links. Make sure you're checking out both of these websites. And we're going to announce a contest at the end of the show. So watch out for that. But make sure you're subscribed to both of the podcasts. And also, I forgot to mention, you are going to be the keynote speaker at the True Crime Podcast Festival, which we were going to be at. We have a table. We're going to do a panel. So we're super excited about that. And actually, I'm going to put in the link for that, folks. So kind of join us there. Sorry, go ahead, babe.
And that's True Crime with Lainey, who was a creator who crushed Shiz, who we had on before as well. So another connection in the true crime realm. I was going to ask you, this is another question that we always ask on the Women Who Rock segments. Is there any way that you feel that your gender has affected your road or your career path?
It's so hard, right? Because I'm not sure, to be totally honest. I feel like, in terms of me starting the podcast and creating true crime content, I was really welcomed mostly with open arms. And because the true crime audience is predominantly women, I mean, my goodness, I think it's like 90% women. I think I was pretty welcome. I will say, I do get all the voice comments, right? My most like infamous review is that I sound like a spooky valley girl, which I kind of take with pride because I agree. I do kind of sound like a spooky valley girl. But that's really been it. I think women always get criticized for their voice. I remember someone went as far as saying that vocal fry is a manipulation tactic. And it's like, I would pay anything to get rid of my vocal fry. I've tried to go to coaches and doctors, and I've eventually settled that this is just how I sound. And I'm not mad at it. I just want to make the podcast as marketable as possible so that these cases go as far and wide as possible. But I would say that that's been the biggest thing as a woman is just having my voice torn down all the time.
Dude, that is wild. Your voice is amazing. I said that before we came out. You sound amazing. I can't believe people give you shit for that, but I guess that's being a woman.
Yeah.
And we have folks in here, and since we've started, people have been saying You sound your voice is amazing, and you sound amazing. So those people can suck it.
Thank you.
Kit, you're welcome. Um, so we I don't know if Julie is still here, but can you talk about how you met Julie and kind of how you guys got together and are working on like a production company together?
Oh my gosh, I was just talking to Julie about this, and I was like, I can't remember when we met. Because I know that we met like online, I think just randomly through social media, and she's someone that I have admired in this space for a long time. Our cases, her sister went missing, not too long after my sister went missing. So we kind of entered this space around the same time, but Julie has certainly been advocating for so much longer. So I don't really remember, but I do remember when I met her in person for the first time at CrimeCon. And she's such a force. Like I always tell people, like Julie can literally like beat me up. You know what I mean? Like Julie is so strong, not only mentally, but physically. And she's just such a powerhouse. And I think when I met her, I was just kind of starstruck. I was there with Kelsey German from the Delphi case, which I'd known Kelsey for quite some time. I met her in person back when she was a teenager. And then I met Julie and I was like, wow, what a powerhouse. And then, yes, sorry, the second part of your question. When my father was arrested in 2020, I took a step back from telling my sister's case because I thought it was the best thing for her case. But I knew that I wanted to do more. And I was like, if I can do it, I think other people can too. How do I kind of replicate what we're doing here? And I decided that I really wanted Voices for Justice, the podcast, to be a network. I wanted to be a safe place for families to come where they know that someone that they're working with has gone through it too, or at least something similar. So I developed this idea of media pressure, which is just really the idea of people telling these stories who are close to them, right? So family, friends, experts. And I knew I wanted to go to Julie and have her be a part of that. So I went to her, and she has this TikTok where she's like, I thought Sarah was absolutely crazy. I'm not a podcaster, I'm just a person. And it's like, but that's the point. That's the point. True crime seems to be one of the only genres out there where it's like a random person is more qualified to do true crime than a family member or somebody close to the case. And I'm not saying that there's not fantastic creators who have no connection, because there certainly are. There are so many out there. But if you think about other genres, right? If you think about, if you want to listen to a podcast about the military, are you going to listen to that from me? Like, probably not, right? I was never in the military. I have no experience. The same with like a medical podcast. So why is it so different in true crime? So I wanted to make it this like kind of one-stop shop for people who are firsthand affected by these experiences. And I knew I wanted to work with Julie, and I know that I wanted, the entire idea really is to tell the real story of Maura Murray. I think it's no secret that her case in particular has been so lost in true crime. It's just so infamous, and there's so many crazy stories and so much speculation out there that I thought it would be great to cut through the noise and get to the facts of it. And Julie, like I mentioned before, is a powerhouse and has so much integrity. And I just knew I wanted to work with her. So I was like, hey, come be season 1 of Media Pressure. Come host it, tell Maura's story. And she was on board. And I'm so grateful for that. I couldn't think of a better partner to do this with.
That's awesome. Chris Duet in the chat says Sarah gets it, and if you guys know, if Chris gives a stamp of approval, you're doing something right. We love Chris, so
I love Chris.
he's the best, right? We've had him on a bunch of times. Shannon just did a show with him, and it was amazing.
As far as with the media pressure, I just think it is so wonderful because there have been so many different people telling Maura's story, and there have definitely been some bad actors telling Maura's story. And a part of the story they tell is about Julie and is about her dad, Fred. And now instead, we get to actually hear from Julie. And, I feel like that's similar to what you were able to do, for Alyssa in your first season as well, because you were so young, and because, you were told this story that was not true. You were brainwashed by your dad, you had so many people telling you, things that were not accurate. And so then you were able to clear that up either on TikTok or on the podcast. And I am like so excited for your production company, because this is something that can really, really help people get out their true story about their loved ones, and to cut through, um, the bullshit, but also, like the title says, put pressure on the media to be, empathetic and to engage the correct way and to find the facts. And so I just wanted to take a second, and I don't want to talk the whole time, but I just wanted to tell you that, because it's incredible what you're doing, and I'm so happy about it.
Oh, well, thank you.
Uh, before I go, babe, I'm gonna announce now, because we want to promote
Yes.
and we want to help. So this is what we're gonna do,
Yes.
folks. We've done this before. We're gonna do it again. We just shared the link from mediapressure.com. So here's the deal: the first episode comes out on February 5th, right, Sarah?
Yes, Monday.
Monday, February 5th. So this is what I want you guys to do. You've done it before, and you always come through. Let's show the Boa effect. This is what we're gonna do. Everyone who gives this the go to the podcast, give it 5 stars, because we want to get in the algorithm. We don't know how it works, but we know if you give 5 stars to a podcast, it gets it out there so more people could do it. This is all you have to do. Give it 5 stars, screenshot, put your handle, whether it's your Twitter handle or your YouTube handle, whatever it is, because your name on there usually isn't the same. Just give 5 stars, say great job, whatever you want to say. Email the shamingofjay@gmail.com, and in the title just put contest entry. And then anyone could pick any shirt from our merch store. The winner will randomly pick someone from those, and you could pick any. Shannon designs our merch, and it's good, folks. So I'm gonna tweet this out too, but you heard it here first. All you gotta do, give 5 stars, mediapressure.com, and send me the review, and we'll spin the wheel and we'll pick someone, because we want to get this thing in the algorithm. We want to get it out there. So I'm sorry, babe. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's a super powerful time for you also to be releasing this with Julie, as it is approaching the 20-year anniversary of Mara being missing. Is that February 9th?
Yes.
Is that okay? So, was that a purposeful move to release it right then, or was that just when it was done and it was just fate?
So, yes and no. So, originally, no, we weren't going to release it on the 20th anniversary. I think we were both excited to get it out there, but of course, the impending trial is really what held everything up, right? Because I didn't know when it was going to happen, and then all of a sudden, it was really supposed to launch last fall, but that's exactly when the trial happened. And then we started talking to each other and we're like, listen, why don't we just release it near the 20th anniversary? It's kind of a no brainer, right? Of course, we want to capitalize on all of the publicity that's going to come out. Why not? When everybody's talking about Mora, hopefully everybody can go listen to Julie and her rendition of this story. Like, that's the thing is, we don't expect anyone to think that media pressure is going to be this completely unbiased look at these cases, right? You've heard these stories from everybody else, and now it's time to hear it from the people who actually knew the person at the center of these stories. So, yeah, we definitely, near the end, were like, why don't we just hold out for the 20th anniversary? It just makes sense.
So I'm curious, since you've started till now, have you seen like an evolution just in the genre, and how things are presented in like the things like the true crime festivals, crime con, stuff like that? Have you seen an evolution since you started doing it?
Oh, it's night and day, 1,000%. I mean, when I started Voices for Justice, especially covering other cases in 2020, my concept of like, hey, you can listen to these stories, now you should do something about them, wasn't really as commonly known as it is today. Back then it felt like this very unique concept, and now that's really the norm, right? If you're not having some type of call to action, if you're not asking your listeners to help in some way, people kind of wonder where that missing piece is. Of course, there are always going to be the more sensational shows that don't really care about those things, and that's fine. I'm not here to dictate how people do true crime, but I have seen so much more empathy throughout these few years. When my dad got arrested, I felt this huge weight off my shoulders because I went through those years advocating for my sister, doing interview after interview. I mean, my gosh, at one point, almost every single night, I said no to no one. I went to somebody's apartment with 2 YouTube subscribers and I was like, let's go, let's talk about it. And I was also the first family member that so many people interviewed. And with that comes, just learning. And so I was kind of like the guinea pig. I felt like this guinea pig family member of true crime. And I'd gone through some really awful experiences, but I never talked about them. I prided myself, and looking back, for families out there watching, I'm not proud of that now, but I really prided myself on being extremely easy to work with. You know what I mean? You need me to do an interview at 9 o'clock at night? No problem. You need me to review a script? No problem. You need me to help edit audio? No problem. You need me to help write part of your script? Absolutely. I want it to be easy to work with because I know that creators in this industry talk about families. You know what I mean? And so my dad was arrested, and this huge weight was really lifted off my shoulders. I was like, wow, I don't have to be that person anymore. And it's not as if I went on the attack to try to shame anyone. I was just like, I need people to know the reality of families in true crime. It's not all rosy. Some of these experiences are awful and unacceptable, and we need to start talking about it. Families, especially back then, were kind of like the unsung ant workers of true crime. They were, people were building careers and stories off of interviews, and families were just kind of left in the wake, dealing with all the trauma of that. So, yeah, when I first started talking about ethics and true crime, and I was like, hey, I don't like this, people were like, basically, not everybody, but there was a good audience out there that was like, you should be grateful. Like, shut up and be grateful. What's wrong with you? But slowly over time, people began to understand, that families don't need to be re-traumatized to make true crime content. There's a much better way of doing things. So, yeah, I feel like it's done a huge, almost 180, if you will, since I started, interviewing for Alyssa. I'm not saying it's perfect now. There's certainly some improvement to be had, but it's truly, I think, a better space for families than it used to be.
And we just got a first entry from Miko, who's in the chat who just gave a 5-star review. So awesome. Thank you, Miko,
Thank
who just
you.
emailed me her screenshot. Sorry, go ahead, babe.
Sorry, I had to.
Yeah, by
remember.
the way, guys, if you hear a weird noise in the background, sometimes we gave Penny and Prudence bones because sometimes they're a pain in the butt during our interviews, and now they're just chomping. They're chompy chomps. So sorry if you hear
It's
it.
chomping. They're running it into the crate. They're like, I thought it was bad before because they were dropping them on the ground, but now they're running it into the wire. I don't know. So that's the noise. I know it's a little strange, but I wanted to ask you too, with this production company and widening your range in that way, will you still be doing your own? Are you still going to be hosting your own season of Voices for Justice?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Voices for Justice is going to continue on. At this point, it's like my baby. And I mean, I wish I could stop today, right? I wish that there were no cases out there and I could say, you guys, we did it, and I don't need to make this podcast anymore. But no, I mean, Voices for Justice will go on as long as people will tolerate me.
Well, I'm just unmuting. I muted Shannon. Sorry, now I can't unmute her. Oh, you muted yourself, babe. All right, never mind. I'm sure they're going to tolerate it for you a while. Could you just tell people for Voices for Justice, just tell them like you like you said before, you like are calling for action. You want folks to help. Can you kind of describe like what an episode is like, so when what it's like for when they listen to it?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, me trying to think of my own format. I mean, yeah, I introduce the case, I give a little synopsis, then I go through it, and I try to pull out important issues. And I think really my own perspective in terms of what the families are going through and my insight in terms of law enforcement. But with that being said, I can only speak to my own experience, and I try very hard not to speculate. I very rarely will theorize. I might present what the most common theories are, but I'm very careful in never inserting my opinion. I never want to say, I think this person did it. I might, if it's a very obvious case, I might get heated and I might allude to it. And I think, the listener is smart. And, in some cases, we all just kind of know what the most likely outcome is. But for the most part, I really just try to lay the facts out there and let the listener decide. And then, of course, every episode ends with a call to action. You'll usually hear me say, which brings me right to our call to action. And those call to actions or those calls to action can change, right? Sometimes a family has a GoFundMe, they have a petition. Sometimes there's something very specific. But at the end of the day, what I usually do is just ask people to share. It goes back to that concept of, hey, you've listened to 30 minutes, 45 minutes, sometimes multiple parts, right? So a few hours of this content. So now is the time to do something. It takes 2 seconds to share these stories. And I always tell people, you may not think that your one share for your Facebook friends or whatever will do anything, but that's exactly how the media pressure got built up in my sister's case, was everybody out there sharing. So if you can take the time to listen, you can take the time to share. It really does take 2 seconds, and it's almost like compound interest in a bank account, right? It just builds and builds and builds into something that you may not have ever realized before. And then I do have a special segment at the end of the show that we don't talk about. It is a secret, but if you know, you know, and that's really where I kind of I talk about my feelings of the case, not usually how I feel about who did it or whatever. But that's where I kind of get on my soapbox sometimes because I never want to push my views in the main show. So I try to give people this little segment at the end where they can kind of opt into that. It's kind of my version of true crime banter that you might hear at the beginning of a podcast. I just put it at the end so that it's optional.
And we talk about that all the time. Like first, and it's free. It's free to share. And some people are like, "Oh, I only have like 10 or so many followers." But like, you never know. Other than compound interest, you never know if there's one person who's following you that might have some sort of connection. So, yeah, folks, share or retweet always helps. A share on Facebook or wherever that always helps a lot. So that's why we keep sharing the stuff. That's why we're saying give 5 stars. Gets it out there. We want to get all these stories out there. Go ahead, babe.
So, as for a call to action for us tonight, what would help you the most with what you're working on right now for Alyssa?
Oh, that's a hard one. Because, right now, I'm not sure that the best thing for Alyssa's case is media attention. I mean, it certainly won't hurt. But,
Mhm.
you know, it's hard for me to say, please go share my sister's case when I know that there are other cases that need that share more, to be totally honest, because her case is just in a different spot. So I would say, I guess, in terms of helping Alyssa, um, I will eventually have a call to action that I don't want to say right now, just because I know that my dad watches what I do. So if you like and you're so compelled to do so, I guess you could follow my social media to look out for that call to action. And in the meantime, just share all the unsolved cases that you see. I really do believe that what I do now is an extension of Alyssa's legacy. So share these cases; they need them.
So I know on Twitter you're at Sarah E. Turney, SarahETurney. Is that the same all around, or is it different handles on different social media?
All around. I had to change all my fun names to boring names. So yeah, Sarah E. Turney on Instagram, on TikTok, which is where I have the most followers. So yeah, that would be great.
Do you? I'm curious because I'm the same way, and I post to all of them. How do you do it? How do you like get stuff? Is it like people say to me sometimes they're like, well, there's like these apps and they post it to every website, but like those don't work, folks. As many like each app is different. Each app has to be formatted differently. I'm curious. How do you have like a process you do to like get your stuff out there on all these different places?
So I do actually use an app.
Son of a bee! Does it really? Does it work for everything?
Yeah, I mean, not for everything. So I do use this app. It's called Hootsuite. I used to be in social media marketing in my past life or whatever. So I use that to, do the main episode posts because, but to your credit, you do have to change it for each and every platform. So I go through that, but it does help with scheduling and making sure that things get out the day the episode comes out, and then a reminder a few days later. So that's mainly what I use it for. But I'm also like, I am still on social media all the time, which is how I really think Alyssa's following got built up. I was in those messages. I mean, my gosh, 24/7, on my couch at midnight, looking like a crazy person responding to people at 1 a.m. or whatever. Like, thank you so much. And I still try to do that to this day. So while I do automate some things because I need to, have time for work and life and other things, I'm really on there also retweeting or reposting, especially Twitter. You can find more of my rants, if you will. But yeah, so it's a combination. The app is really great to help out, but also, a lot of what I post on social media is just how I feel now. And I do try to make a TikTok for as many cases as I can. I will say making videos has gotten harder. It's hard to sit there and make TikToks. And I know that may sound like, I'm sure some people are like, oh gosh, yeah, is it really that hard to make a TikTok? But it's a lot. And to be honest, I'm usually like no makeup, in sweatpants, working, especially up to the launch of Media Pressure, upwards of 12 hours a day. So I don't really feel like pretending to look pretty or whatever on TikTok. So it's a big combination. I'm sorry, I have the longest winded answers ever.
No, no, are you kidding me? No, you don't. Go ahead. That's we want to hear from you. Don't apologize. I mean, I'll say about first of all, what did we learn there? Don't listen to me. There is an app. If you didn't know it already, don't listen to me. But second, I'll say this about TikTok, man. As opposed to other apps for me on there, people come, some of these folks will come for you on on the TikTok, man. So I give you a lot of credit for just putting stuff out there because they do not care on the TikTok. They come for you. I posted something the other day and they were like coming for you. I'm like, gee, I had a sound effect. They're like, what's with the sound effects? This is terrible. I'm like, anywho, go ahead,
Yeah,
baby.
no, no. Yeah, TikTok will do that to you. There's a lot of love on there, especially for families. I will say that. Like the TikTok community, I feel like when I was out of ideas and I started that TikTok, they just surrounded me and so many of them, you know what I mean? And so many families have turned to TikTok. So I think that there's kind of a special place for families on there where most people are kind. But in general, as a content creator, when you post stuff, people can be ruthless. And there's a lot of mean kids on there. So, you got to watch out for them.
But our group here is we're going to be awesome, and we're gonna retweet everything. We're going to give it 5 stars. I think I already have 2 more 5 stars. So thank you. I'm going to tweet it out. So don't worry if you didn't kind of get it. I'm going to tweet it out too. And we're going to do this contest. But go ahead, babe.
I was just going to say that, and is another thing besides like worrying about how much static you get about your voice on your podcast, then you also have to worry about your appearance, when you're on TikTok or you're on Instagram or whatever else. So that's another thing that I think female creators get drug into, but also then it's like another level of hard when you're a family member as well. Like you didn't set out to be like an influencer or like a TikTok videographer or whatever. You are doing what you're doing for your family member. And so I'm sure that complicates it to another level of over just even like being a woman and feeling like, oh my gosh, they're going to say stuff about, whatever. So how do you how do you stay focused on the good?
I think that part of my defense mechanism throughout all of this, all the trauma that I've experienced, is somehow I have this like blinding sunshine in my mind. And I am so grateful for that because I don't know, it's like when it comes down to bad things in the world, it's, certainly take your time and be sad about them. If somebody says that my lipstick looks stupid or whatever, I'll take that moment and be like, oh, that sucks or whatever. But at the end of the day, you can only do what you can do. And especially, I have 1 million followers plus on TikTok, and it's a numbers game. Not everybody's going to love you. And that's something I had to learn because at first I would take it really personally. I feel so blessed sometimes in my true crime experience in terms of the audience. Most people were so kind that when I got, a mean comment here or there, it just devastated me. And after a certain point, again, my followers were going up in count, and I was like, it's just a numbers game. Not everybody's going to like me, and that's okay. If I'm not for them, I'm not for them, and that's all right. I just have to be my raw, authentic self because I don't know how else to be. That's the only thing I can be. I'm not good at acting. I never set out to be an influencer. I was just a desperate sister who turned to social media and got a ton of followers. So yeah, I think it's just focusing on the good, taking your time to grieve the bad, and moving on, right? If there's something bad about this world, take your time, be sad about it, and then do something to change it. That's what's always helped me.
That's awesome. The great advice that I need to take sometimes to myself. I mean, we just started this less than a year ago doing this, and people will give me a lot of junk for cursing and stuff. And it's just like, and I'm at the point now where, like, kind of like you said, it's like I say, all right, that's fine. I'm not for everyone, and that's okay. But the people who are here are for me. So mostly. So that's great advice. I'm curious. So you're going to be the keynote speaker at the True Crime and Paranormal Podcast Festival. Have you done that before? Or are you excited for that? What's that going to be about? Well, I guess you
Yeah.
can't. You probably go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. I just get so enthusiastic. Yes. So I was at the first True Crime Podcast Festival before it was the True Crime and Paranormal Podcast Festival. And that was great. I spoke there. I've spoken at CrimeCon a ton of times. I've done, cold case symposiums, that kind of thing. But no, I've never been a keynote speaker. So I am very excited. And I feel safe. You know what I mean? It's with a bunch of people I know, I trust, I love. Lainey, so many of the podcasts there are people that I know. And for the most part, like I said, people are pretty kind to me. So overall, I'm excited. Of course, I'm nervous. I think I just feel this great sense of responsibility with something like that. I don't take it lightly, and I understand that there are creators and families in this space that look up to me. So it's like this very serious yet exciting thing. And yeah, I don't know. I just want to help people. So at the end of the day, I'm excited for it.
That's awesome. You're muted, babe. I don't know if you had a question. I have one if you don't. I'll go. All right. So I'm curious. You talked about how when you first started out, you were in your closet with $100, setup or whatever. I know we have some people in here who are, or just started a podcast, or maybe thinking about going into podcasting. Do you have any advice for those folks who want to get into it, as far as equipment or content or anything? Any advice for any folks who want to get into podcasting?
Yeah, I think rule number one is get your audio right. It's not like when I started back in 2019 where people are so forgiving. I did interviews by holding up my cell phone to my microphone on speakerphone. I didn't know what to do. And you can't really get away with that these days. So get your audio right. And when I say that, that doesn't mean you have to make a huge investment. What is it called? The Audio Technica AT 2020, I think it is. Don't quote me on that.
Well, I
It's
tell you what. Sorry, I have your Amazon link. So, folks, if you're thinking about it, I'm going to put it in right here, right now. It has her set up, and I'm sure she gets a little commission on that, which will help. So I just posted it in there. But go ahead. I'm sorry that's in there. So I'm sure that probably has the things that you're describing now.
I think it does. A long time ago, I made a TikTok video about how to start a podcast for $100 in your closet or whatever. So that does exist for anybody that cares. But yeah, just find a decent quality microphone. And again, it doesn't have to be expensive. I do recommend filming in your closet. It's fantastic. The clothes will help with the sound and all that if you can stand it. I will say that I'm in Arizona. So one time during the summer, I literally almost passed out because there was no air in there. So please be careful if you are recording in a room that does not have ventilation. But just get started, play around with it. Get your microphone, get in your closet or wherever is a good space for you. Now I'm in my spare bedroom with like foam on the wall or whatever. And just get started. There's what's that saying? Like there's no better time to start than now. So just do it, honestly. Get past the fear. Also, everyone hates their voice, so just know that that is natural. Yeah, and just do your best.
Yeah, man. When I listen to myself, when I have to make clips of myself, I'm like, oh, brutal. Is that what you sound like? Oh my god. But yeah, we all feel that way.
Yeah, and I learned, like, so much just from YouTube, you know what I mean? I didn't pay for courses. I did have some friends in the industry that were fantastic and helped me, but pretty much everything I learned was through YouTube, and there's free software that you can use to record and edit, so it can be super inexpensive.
Yeah, everything that I've pretty much done on this stream, I've learned from YouTube, like the
Mhm.
setup, the programs, where to get stuff. So that's great advice. Go ahead, babe. I feel like you have a question.
I was just going to say, is there any other projects that you're working on currently that we can help with in any way, shape, or form?
Um, I'm not sure any that I can announce, to be totally
Okay.
honest. I have so many things going on, but I will let you know. Right now, it's full steam ahead with media pressure. So, it's no secret that I really want it to be successful. I wanna show the world that there's space for people like me and Julie and everybody else that wants to do a future season of media pressure.
Um, sorry, I saw someone chatting. Thank you guys. Thank you everyone in the chat for supporting us here and supporting this. And I know you guys already got another email from for a 5-star review. So thank you guys. And don't worry, I'm gonna tweet it out. So like if you don't if you forget or anything, don't worry, I'm gonna tweet it out. Oh, Julie Murray with another comment says, perhaps the most powerful thing I've heard in 20 years was from Sarah, and I still cry over it. I love you, and I wish I never met you. Hashtag Sister Strong. Get the gum, J-Bo. So get the gum is referring to I cry sometimes on stream, so people have told me to get gum. We call it crying gum, so that like when you're chewing gum, you stop crying. But that was really nice and awesome. And thank you so much for being here, Julie. We appreciate that.
I
Uh,
love that so much. Oh my gosh, I love Julie. I love Julie. And I will say that term actually because of Julie, I didn't realize I was saying that to so many people, and then Julie told me that, right? The "I love you and I wish I never met you." So I'm using it for a future project. So shout out to Julie for making me realize that that's a powerful statement. It's just genuinely how I felt, but I think it's so true, and I think that's how so many family members feel when you connect is like, "I love you so much, and I'm so grateful to have you in my life, and at the same time, I wish none of this ever happened to you, and you could, hopefully someday go on and forget all about true crime."
Absolutely. I just wanted to say that we, as a community, tuned in, like I told you before, to the trial and watched you testify, etc. And you did, like you said, you did everything that they told you to do as far as, remaining kind. And it was excruciating for us to watch them do that to you as well. But I hope that you know that all across the internet, the people that were watching you were in awe of your strength and how well you did, and what an amazing thing you did from beginning to now for Alyssa. And I know you probably feel like she would do the same thing for you if the role was reversed. Um, and I just wanted to say that the best parts of that trial were getting to see you be able to have that voice, come out, and as well as her friend. Her one friend got a little bit sassy, and we all loved that. We were all here for it. That day we were like, yes, queen. So it was kind of good for her to be able to take that role too, since they didn't want you to do that. Um, that did get to come out, and I felt like, you know, I just felt so in awe of like Alyssa's friends and sister are there, like just giving it to them. And I just want you to know that from the bottom of our heart here in this community, you did such an amazing thing.
Oh, well, thank you. I actually watched your coverage. You guys were one of the only people covering the
oh
trial.
no, really?
Yeah, I did. So I would come home every day from the trial and watch you guys. Yeah, I would. And what's so funny about that, the friend's name is Charity, and I'll never forget. Actually, I didn't see it in court, but I'll never forget her telling me this. That when she got off the stand, and you can't see it because the cameras were like faced one way or whatever, she looks at my dad and gives like a kiss. She's like, at him, you know what I mean? And I was like, "You're such a fucking ass." Like, I wish I could have done something like that. Like, I wish I could have got that out in the trial. But I was, I was strictly ordered to be on my best behavior, so I was doing what I was supposed to do for Alyssa, but she was certainly allowed to get away with that. But yeah, I would come home and watch it, and I think one of my favorite moments was, I talked about earlier how the defense attorney, Jamie Jackson, yelled at me, right? He was like, were you lying then? Are you lying now?" Or whatever. And at a certain point, he kept getting so close to me. And Jay, I think it was you. Maybe I'm wrong. It was all kind of a blur. But when he would approach me, you guys were like, "Stay away from her! Get
Yes,
away from her!"
that was me.
I was dying. It was so funny. It was such a nice comedic relief for me during the trial. But yeah, I would come home and watch it, especially the chat, right? Because I wanted to know what people thought. I was like, am I crazy or is this going as bad as I think it's going? And everybody in the chat just reaffirmed what I already thought was happening. So thank you for doing that and being one of the only people doing that. And thank you to everybody that watched and commented, because even though it wasn't going the way that I wanted it to go, it did make me feel better that I wasn't alone in feeling that way.
I can't even tell you how much that means to me. Like that you said, because sometimes I worry when I'm covering these things that like when I get like that and I'm like so animated to it that maybe a family member would be like, "Oh, this guy's too much." So like for you to say that, and yes, it was ridiculous. The guy, and he was like a big guy. I'm like, step back, get back to your stance, sir. Like I think he was giving you a headphone or whatever it was. It was making me so angry. But that
His
means
face would get so red too. Like, so he looked like angry. So that always bothered me. Like, I was like, you are like practically spitting on her. You're so close with your weird red face.
Yeah, he's the worst, and he really is. I mean, my goodness. And I remember after the trial, somebody, gosh, what did he say? Oh, he finally said, "We know that Alyssa's dead, and we want to find her murderer." And I remember retweeting it and asking, I said, "Well, Jamie Jackson, were you lying then during the trial about believing that she was still alive, or are you lying now?" And it's probably one of the most petty things I've ever done, but I will tell you, it felt great, and I do not regret it.
that's awesome. Wow, it has already been an hour, folks. I can't believe it. This has been absolutely amazing. So let me. Any final words you want to say to folks? What can we do just in general to help you out? Or I mean, I know we talked about it, but is there anything we didn't go over that we can help you? Or any final words you want to say to the folks out there?
Oh, you guys are so sweet. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the support. Thank you for inviting me on. Thank you for watching the trial and commenting and making me not feel alone. And thank you for supporting families in this space. Not everybody does. So just thank you.
You got it, babe. You usually have any final words from you, babe, or are you muted because of the dogs chomping?
I was muted because Prudence has now shoved her the bone outside the crate twice and is like, "Ooh." So if you hear that,
Babe, how was that? How was
but
Prudence? Could you do that again? How was she?
like that, exactly like that. But
Sarah, real quick, babe, before you go, Sarah wants to know: do you take if you take suggestions for cases? So
Yes, if you go to voicesforjusticepodcast.com, I do have a form that you can fill out. And
that's
families do get higher priority.
awesome, awesome. Go ahead, babe. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I
no,
cut you off
that's
on your
okay.
dog impression.
Um, we're just so happy that you were here. I am ecstatic about your project with Julie because I just know I think it's going to be life changing for people. And so I just am just so happy that you would take the time out to be with us. And I just want to express my gratitude for you doing that because you did not have to do it. And I know you're busy, and I know a lot of people probably ask you for things a lot. So thank you.
Oh,
Uh,
thank you.
and guys, I'm gonna end this. When I end the stream, it's gonna take you in the portal to Publicly Buzz tonight. They're doing the show on that Kansas City 3 case, which is wild. That's at 9. So make sure you get in there and like it. Sarah, truly a badass and a woman who rocks. Our first of 2024. Thank you so much for coming on, and guys, we'll tweet out the details for the contest. Make sure you're following all on social media, retweeting, getting this out there, and I'll send out the details. So thanks so much, everybody, and have a good night, guys.